Hi, everyone. If you're following us, welcome back to Delusional by Design, redesigning Google Maps AI. So initially, this series started as a way to redesign AI features at large, big name corporations. And I added in the title Delusional by Design because yes, we're going to focus for the most part on what's possible right now, what's tactical, what's feasible for a business like Google Maps or Netflix or Hinge or Spotify AI, you name it. But I wanted to also add a little bit of magic, a little bit of an ability to dream delusionally big, beyond what's possible today and into the realms of AI, maybe 10, 20 years into the future, if we can, or even just 5 years. So with that, there's just a different bit of spin on it for this session's Redesign Google Maps AI. In case you don't know me, my name is Samaya. I'm a founder at UX Woman. I have 9 years of expertise across startups, consulting, corporate, specialized in brands, inclusive design for brands like Disney, Hulu, Marvel, Squarespace. And I will continue to build in all things inclusive and accessible design, whether or not it's popular in this current stage and with current companies. So topics we cover in this session. We are going to cover really quickly mindsets for rapid design ideation. We only have 15 minutes, so let's make the most of it. We're going to gather some context about Google Maps' current AI features and look at some templates. And then we're going to look into AI design heuristics in particular. So with that, let's get into some mindsets for rapid design ideation. The purpose of this session is, of course, to share ideas and topics about what we're passionate about. Feel free to ideate with us, find like-minded individuals, network on our YouTube channel to find folks you can collaborate with, come to a consensus on pressing problems around Google Maps AI, and get, of course, a small taste of design thinking, UX, UI design, and AI product design. Of course, we're only doing this for 15 minutes, so the purpose of the session is not to start building solutions right away or turn this into a portfolio piece. It really takes time to validate and brainstorm really good ideas. In fact, we need a lot more additional methods to validate some of the ideas we come up with today. We'll need UX interviews, stakeholder interviews, ideation sessions, focus groups, generating business models, monetization strategy, marketing, and obviously we need to collaborate with multiple teams across a lot of different functions. Design is not a solo experience, even though we're having fun ideating today. And design is also not about making things pretty in Dribble or Behance, or should I say even vibe coding right now with AI, right? Like you can come up with platforms through vibe coding, and they might look really cool and functional, but is there any strategy work behind it? I would say vibe coding is probably the new Dribble and Behance of the tech world today. The truth is that 80%, if not 90% of design work is actually context, gathering context from user interviews, stakeholder interviews, competitor analysis, information architectures, concepts, wireframes, workflows, process and journey maps. It's actually the behind the scenes iteration on the architecture. And then that last 20%, if not 10%, is making the design look really pretty and thinking about style guides, colors, typography, and the high fidelity focus on one concept. But most of that creative work is super messy and super behind the scenes and not the pretty things you see in Dribble, Behance, or vibe coding right now. And if you would like to learn more about the UX Woman community, feel free to go to www.uxwoman.com. We have a Slack channel, we have a Reddit group, we have a LinkedIn group. We post 200 plus entry-level jobs every month in the UX field. We have a whole ton of free and paid resources that you can take advantage of. And I just want you to realize that because we're only getting about 15 minutes to design in Google Maps AI, our designs are going to look more like the image on the left rather than the image on the right. So right now, we're really thinking about the structure of what we want to build and how we want to build it and designing modules and components for larger scale designs. We're not trying to put together a high-fi product, right? It's more about the concept at this stage. So think about us as putting together the skeleton of what we would like. We're not putting together a full-fledged human being with like more than bones. They have the muscle, they have the skin, We're just in the very skeletal phase right now. So with that, let's get into some context on Google Maps. So what is the scope of AI features in Google Maps currently? Right now, it's actually quite more than you think. Google is working on improving a whole portfolio of AI features when it comes to the Google Map product. And of course, Google Maps is super sophisticated. It's one of the most sophisticated mapping systems in the world with so much data, literally mapping almost every inch of the world. I don't know if they have every single inch, but it's pretty close, right? They have at least every inch of land, if not sea. And Google has invested heavily into AI summaries of a variety of locations, from coffee shops to restaurants to national parks, museums, hiking trails, scenic spots. And these summaries are available in the search results. And different locations are prioritized by AI depending on the search. So of course, Google is the king or queen of search. So they're cataloging and categorizing all these locations based on what the user needs. And AI is also heavily used to plan routes and actually see places before you get there through 3D immersive views of a variety of locations. So again, AI technology is being used, for example, to create this bird's eye view of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. I had a chance to actually visit the Rijksmuseum and it's incredible. So highly recommend you visit a lot of the art museums in that area. Just side note. And while all this fancy tech is great and continues to be splashed in news headlines on a regular basis, we have to ask the question, is it helping? Is this AI actually helpful to humans? The answer to me is yes and no. And there's some elements that Google Maps is doing really well with their AI features, and some that could really be improved. So I would say that the AI features that Google Maps have currently has the potential to make a lot of our lives easier, but sometimes it misses the mark. So what is an example of good Google Maps AI? I think it's pretty great that the Google Maps can analyze our routes in real time and make suggestions to switch to a faster route depending on traffic patterns. So Google will actually interrupt your drive or ride and ask you if you would want to switch to a faster route, giving you a few seconds to make the switch while trying to minimize the notifications it's sending you or interruptions it's sending you while you're driving. So you can very quickly say accept or dismiss. And that is a really great example of AI kind of analyzing data in the background and to give us a synthesis of that data only when we really need it and only if it's beneficial to us and only if they are sure that we would really want something different. How AI could be improved currently. So we could say an example of bad or could be improved Google Maps AI is their way their search recommendations are working right now. So Google can rely on a vast data set of locations all over the world to help us discover new places, but the recommendation system doesn't always understand what we want as humans or the context of why we're searching what we're searching. So when, this is why it's so important to have UX research strategy, product strategy, to really understand different user perspectives and provide the best types of recommendations depending on the context of that situation. As people, we can be wildly unpredictable, we can be complex, we can be nuanced, we can be emotional, and most of all, we can be contradictory. And that's why AI will never be able to fully replace the creative and strategic work that we do, because who else can deal with our unpredictability? Only ourselves, right? And so we need to really start to design for these different moods. Sometimes we want to get to our destination fast. Other times we want to explore local restaurants. And other times we would like to sightsee and stroll about aimlessly through a city, right? And not really have any destination in mind. So one example of this was I was in Rome recently and I was sightseeing and I wanted to hop from monument to monument using Google Maps and I was walking. And as I was sightseeing, I would go from one monument I saw on the map to the next. And as I was wandering, I got annoyed whenever in between one monument to the next, because I added stops along the way, Google Maps would recommend commercial stores from big name brands for me to stop by. And they're like, hey, do you want to go to this big name brand? And I was like, why should I go there? I'm in Rome. I don't want to go to a big name corporate company. I just want to see a mom and pop shop. And the only way I'm going to find a mom and pop shop and local, authentic culture from Rome is if I'm walking around and exploring. And so obviously Google Maps prioritized consumerism, even though it knew I was walking around the different sites, but here it was telling me to go to a kitchen store on my way to see the Colosseum. And it made no sense. And it was clear, like, okay, AI, you have no clue what I'm about right now. And it showed the kind of consumerism behind Google, right? Like Google's out to make money, all the big corporates are out to make money and share or advertise the big name brands rather than showing me local sites and mom and pop shops. So I actually ended up switching off Google Maps because I was like, I'm annoyed at you. I don't want to deal with you. I'd rather walk around, get lost, and then come back and find you and help me get home. So that's just, one example of the context of Google Maps was just off. It just didn't understand what I needed as a user. And so how might we leverage context to provide the ideal route to a user at a given time? And we need to start to design for uncertainty, especially when we're designing more complex and more nuanced AI features like Google Maps. You might have seen my past videos on redesigning Netflix and Spotify. And those were actually, quite frankly, easier use cases because they depended on personalization. They depended on presenting a variety of options. With maps, sometimes you just need that one option, right? When you're driving and you only can focus on the road, you don't want to be distracted by a variety of options. So maps has to be designed a little bit differently, which is why we need to take into consideration some of the AI design systems and points of view in place before we design Google Maps. So AI relies on inputs and outputs, right? So it relies on inputs from humans and provides the right outputs based on the input or context it's received from us. If a user input is incorrect, AI cannot deliver a good output. So a lot of AI systems are designed to catch errors in human inputs. And they're designed to help users input the right information and help verify that we're putting in the right information correctly. And you can see kind of how it does it in Google search as well. As I start typing in something, the options I'm provided get narrowed down until it's one or two options, right? And you're seeing AI in real time trying to figure out what I want actually. Like, what is the search that I'm trying to go for? And as it narrows it down, as it figures it out more, you're getting that one search element. So that's kind of to show you the spectrum of certainty to uncertainty, right? And if AI is certain that you didn't put in the right information, it's going to ask you to verify that you put in the right information. Another element of AI is if it's really certain that you have put in the right information and it's certain about what you want, it will provide one option that you can either accept or reject, and it'll help you work through a task flow or user flow faster. This is particularly important when driving and even when designing AI driverless cars, right? If you're in a situation where you have to scan the road and you're on a highway, you don't want to be presented with multiple options. That's too distracting. So AI has to be pretty certain about what you want and then give you a yes, no option. And that's what Google Maps does when it says that there's a faster route available and it gives you a small amount of time to accept or reject. Because it doesn't want to distract you. And so that is a really crucial and well done element in Google Maps AI to really minimize the number of distractions. As we get more into designing for driverless cars, you will see those themes arise as well, where we're actually trying not to give users too many options so that we can keep them safe. And that's something Google does really well. However, because Google has kind of defaulted to providing one option at a time, and Google does this all the time on a route, right? Even when I was walking about Rome, Google was just like, hey, do you want to go to this kitchen store? By the way, I don't cook. I'm not a great cook. I would never go to a kitchen store, even if it's a big fancy name. So it just didn't make sense, right? In a walking context, you can provide me more options. Yes, I'm walking around, but I can see more. If I was biking, Yes, you don't want to provide me too many options. So when AI is not certain about your needs, it should ideally be providing you with multiple options that you can select from. And this is how content prioritization on apps like Netflix and Spotify work. Of course, when you're browsing Netflix and Spotify, the context is super different. You're sitting in front of a TV or device or laptop, you're relaxed, ideally, and you have the time to like look at all these different options. However, yes, Google Maps defaults to the one option because they're not always sure whether you have time to look at the different options. And whether it's safe for you to look at the different options. So I can understand why their recommendation system kind of sucks right now because they're defaulting to the one option at a time. They're trying to prioritize safety while someone is on the go or moving, and that makes total sense. So how can we help design things better? Let's go to FigJam and figure it out together. So I'm going to pull up our FigJam. Give me a second. And we'll go from there. All right. So this is, again, a very bare bones set of wireframes where I can just literally put text and shapes together to create a very basic skeletal bare bones concept. And in this case, I am going to ideate on like the findability of different options while the one thing Google hasn't even thought about too is the situations of passengers, road trips, right? So before we even get into it, let's look at different contexts. Walking around a city, sightseeing, right? And this is just me making a case for Google presenting more choices. Even though it might be distracting, maybe we can create something like partner mode, right? If we're walking around sightseeing or there's a passenger driver, right, who is usually doing the navigation and thinking, where we can say passenger mode, right? So what would like a passenger mode look like? Because if someone is in passenger mode, then that means they're taking the passenger seat and they can then navigate the driver to do the things that they want to do. So how might we create this passenger mode, for Google? Because Google is right now always making the assumption it's always the driver. So maybe we put it on passenger mode. And like, let's say if we're in passenger mode, it shows up here somewhere easy to click, right? Probably at the bottom, because we do want drivers to get out of passenger mode really fast if they really need to make quick decisions while on the road. So let's say this is passenger mode. I'll make it a nice red button so that it's easy to get out of it. And I can say stop for passenger mode, right? A red always signifies stop passenger mode. I could probably put a great icon in there. Let's assume this is the whole map area. And this blank screen is the map area. And now I can present them with more options in passenger mode. So I could probably show a variety of tiles, each with a location or site on the way. And maybe they can click into it, each of these, if they want to learn more. I'm putting it up top so that they're not, distracted by it. And maybe here's the map. And I'm going to put a big square. Oops, I'll make the map green to show that it's the map. Make you green. And so maybe there's little dots showing where these locations are. And let's make them blue dots. There we go. So here's these different dots. And maybe the dots are even color coded, right? So maybe blue stands for restaurant. Maybe we're driving on a road trip and we're looking at restaurants, but maybe we're also interested in cafes, in which case it would be an orange color. And maybe it's highlighted here. Maybe as I scroll on the map or hover over the map, maybe the image becomes bigger, right? So if I'm hovering over this guy, then he will take over the entire screen. So let's see what that looks like in passenger mode, because now this gives me the chance to present more options. I'm hovering over the orange guy, and now instead of seeing all these different options, I'm just seeing a grander, detailed version of just the one orange place, location. And I'm getting the details of that location. And it could be a picture, it could be a description, it could be reviews. And we can start to play around with the space of what's going on there, right? How much needs to be the map versus how much needs to be the options presented. And obviously we don't have much real estate to work with because this is a mobile phone. Maybe it's a sideways drop down, right? Maybe we want the map to be prioritized. So we can still provide options in passenger mode. But really, let's put this back. So you're seeing how I'm refining it, right? Like if I wanted to keep the map front and center, maybe we do something like this. And now we make the tiles super small. And they're like all these little mini tiles with different options. And then they will probably expand. Let's make one blue. I'll make the rest of these gray because we don't have much time. But you're seeing how, as we're working through the problem, we're realizing all these issues with space, and maybe what we thought in our heads would work really well actually is a pretty bad idea. And it didn't work out as well as we thought it would. So maybe and I'm just going to delete this guy and copy paste this guy. Maybe if I hovered on the orange, maybe now we see a view where just the orange gets highlighted. The map becomes bigger and Mr. Orange takes over. And now we're still really prioritizing the map. And I would argue that this is a better design than what we originally came up with, where we're still really thinking about real estate. We're really still prioritizing the main view. And then we can get out of passenger mode, right? So if now when we're in green, we might be in driver mode, for example. And really prioritize the one single option as opposed to trying to show the driver too many options, just so that we can keep them safe. So really interesting how AI design systems work, and what works for one type of app will not always work for the other one, and we have to prioritize safety of our users above all else. I hope you enjoyed this session of Delusional Design, and hope to see you in the next one.